Good evening and welcome to our regular City Council meeting for Monday, February 1st, 2021. To start, this meeting is being held in accordance with the Iowa Public Information Board using the protocols under the Governor's Emergency Proclamation. So with that, I'll call this meeting to order with a roll call from Madam Clerk.
Miller.
Here.
DeBoer.
Here.
Cruz.
Here.
Harding.
Here.
Dara.
Here.
Sires.
Here.
Dunn.
Here.
All members present, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Our first item is approval of minutes for the regular meeting of January 19th, 2021. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
The motion and seconded. Any discussion? And so with that, seeing none, then all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That does pass. And Madam Clerk, are there any agenda revisions tonight?
Just a minor one, Mr. Mayor. On item number 4, it should read contingent upon approval of ordinance 2981 instead of 2982.
Okay, thank you. So I will read it that way when we get to that item 4. Thank you. For special order of business tonight, we have item 2, which is a public hearing on the proposed maximum levy for affected property tax levies for FY 2022. Is there a motion to approve publication?
So moved. Second.
A motion and seconded. Madam Clerk, do we have any written communications on file?
I have no written communications on file, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So I will turn it over to Director Jen Rodenbeck for our staff comments tonight. Director Rodenbeck, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Mayor. Tonight's the public hearing to set the maximum for the applicable levies of the FY22 budget. Presentation was given at the January 19th Committee of the Whole meeting, and in that presentation outlined many factors that go into the budget and explained that the total proposed tax rate for FY22 is $11.38, which is actually lower than the current FY21 budget of $11.43. However, we also explained in the presentation that even though the rate's lowering, that we wanted to make sure everybody understood that when you take in all the rollback factors for each of the classes of property, what that ends up being is actually a 1.98% increase for residential, an actual 0.44% decrease for commercial industrial, and a 5.68% decrease for multi-residential. It was also explained in the presentation that for tonight, the maximum levy is only for certain applicable levies under the state of Iowa. So you'll see that this rate shows only $10.79, which is actually a slight decrease of 0.5% over last year's tax askings. And again, this form is set by the state of Iowa. So tonight is really the first hearing in the budget process. The final step will be the final budget approval at the second hearing. And then the presentation about the budget was included in the January 19th council packet, and the full preliminary budget document is in the packet for tonight. So if anyone wishes to view those, they're available.
With that, I'll open it for public comment, and speakers can raise their hand by pressing the *9 button on their phone or the raise hand icon on their device. So I see Mr. Frein's hand, so go ahead. Name and address for the record, please, sir.
TJ Frein, 1319 Austin Way. I know that because of the rollback, which is beyond the city's control, but the budget as a whole is within the city's control, and the 1.98% increase to residential, which may sound like crumbs. We are in a pandemic year where a lot of businesses were shut down. A lot of people's incomes were affected. So I know with the budget, we can control that a little bit, and I'd like to see that closer to zero at the end. I mean, even a slight increase in property tax asking for residential people is too much in a pandemic year. So thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Frein. And any other public comment for this item? I see no other hands, so I will consider the public hearing closed and bring us to item 2E, which is a resolution approving and adopting the maximum levy for affected property tax levies for FY22. Is there a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Open it for council discussion. Okay, seeing none, then it's been motioned and seconded, and this requires a roll call vote.
Dunn,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
DeBoer,
Aye.
Cruz,
Aye.
Harding,
Aye.
Dara,
Aye.
Sires.
Nay.
6 voting aye, 1 voting nay, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That brings us to old business, which is items 3, 4, and 5. Again, like our last meeting, some of the topics will bleed over into each other, but we'll try to keep them focused on the amendments at hand, or the ordinance at hand. Item 3 is passing ordinance 2981, amending Chapter 6 Animals of the Code of Ordinances relative to permitting poultry in residential areas upon its second consideration. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
The motion and seconded. Before opening it to council discussion, I do have some comments from city staff regarding some proposed additions and changes based on how the amendments came out last time. So I'd like to give staff a chance to present. Is that Director Sheets?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll go over some of the things in the staff report that were attached to the second reading. At the last council meeting, the council did the first reading of the ordinance, and in that accepted amendments that expanded the definition of poultry and also considered the removal of a size requirement for the coop and the run, opting to refer to some animal husbandry standards. And so we consider those changes, and what is in the packet includes those changes as amended by the council. But we did want to go through how there are a couple other changes that kind of has a little bit of a ripple effect that we thought might be good to bring forward to the council, and then a little bit of research that we did on the animal husbandry standard. And so a little bit about the ripple effect, as noted in section 6-60 about noises. In that section, we tried to, with the original proposal, enumerate a little bit about the different types of sounds that the type of fowl that was included in that poultry definition might make. And now with the expanded definition, there could be quite a few others that would be hard to really kind of list. And so we opted for suggesting that be simplified just simply to refer to it as noise or noise making. The other one is that in section 6-64 and 65, there are lists of the different types of baby fowl. And again, coming to adding more to that definition, we thought maybe it would just be better to opt to simplify that to referring to them as an animal. And so those recommended changes are not in the ordinance that you have in front of you, but are in the staff report as items with specific amendment recommendations that we have related to that. Also in section 6-304 and 305, there were some provisions, or there currently are, about the opening sizes and some minimum dimensions of those. And based on the different sizes that the type of definition of poultry would allow, we would recommend just removing that so that we don't have complications of conflicts based on smaller animals being able to escape possibly. The other one that I mentioned is that we did some research about the general husbandry standards to see what we could find related to that. What we often found in searching a number of different terms, just thinking that, again, a common person just doing a little bit of research about what that standard might be so that they could propose something. We weren't able to find something that really spoke to a lot of the variety of poultry that we have in our definition. Most often, the term that was coming up was related to chickens. There was a fair amount of information about that, and in fact, then I found a poultry extension website that then referred to 5 different other extension services, and it kind of was, some of them mentioned a size, some of them just said, just build it to the right size, and didn't really offer any guidance on that. And so some of them that offered guidance said that it should be based on body weight. We found that that could be pretty problematic. It would bring a lot of variability to the process because obviously we're talking about birds that might be growing if we buy them as babies, for example. So how would we approach that? We were having difficulty finding anything that might speak to animal husbandry standards for each of the types of poultry that are in the definition, and so felt that if it was difficult for us to find that, how would that go in anybody else looking for that? How would it go when people might disagree about what the standard should be? What is a standard site to refer to? So again, we just don't want to, those end up being complications to implementing an ordinance, and they also become complications to enforcing an ordinance when somebody is unhappy about what might be occurring on somebody else's property. And so we felt from the get-go that it was pretty important that we take a thorough look at the ordinance and propose changes that we thought would help us ensure clarity, so it would help with any enforcement issues we might have. And it's really hard to know what those issues might be. So we were really opting on the conservative end there about at least identifying a minimum size. Obviously, a smaller bird needs less, a larger bird needs more. So hopefully an owner is going to take care to size it appropriately, but at least the minimum avoids any issues of clarity down the line if we have a concern about animal neglect or improper sizing or that type of thing. So again, attached in the packet is the ordinance that staff interpreted was the amended version of what council discussed at the last meeting. The red lines show only the amendments that were passed at the last meeting. So any of the things that I have talked about here in my presentation would have to be an amendment to the current ordinance that's in your packet. So in order to adopt the changes recommended in the memorandum, again, you would need a motion to amend it and then incorporate the changes which we've suggested in the staff report, what those might be, as well as on the minimum sizing, just referring back to what was originally proposed in the ordinance would be the staff recommendation. If we were to make new amendments tonight to the ordinance outside of what's mentioned in the staff report or what you have in your packet, we would recommend that those amendments be discussed by the council in kind of a general direction, but then postpone any of the readings so that staff can then review what council has suggested and see if we would anticipate that anything else should be considered in trying to accommodate that amendment from the council. So with that, I'll turn over to the mayor.
Thank you, Director Sheets. So with that, open it up for additional council questions.
I have a question.
Yes, Councilor DeVere, please.
I got several phone calls after the last meeting on this, and two of the questions that people asked, I guess I didn't have an answer for, so I was curious if staff could answer. One was on the placement of the coop on the lot line. If it's for 10 turkeys, it could be fairly large, maybe bigger than a shed, but yet a shed has a setback. So they were questioning what the setback requirement would be for the neighbor's coop.
A coop would be, I think what we've got in the ordinance right now is that it would need to be 25 feet from any adjacent residence, and then could not be located in an easement, for example. So if there's a backyard drainage easement of 10 feet, for example, it couldn't be in that. Does that answer it?
Well, so basically they could put the coop on the lot line as long as it's 25 feet from the home, but if they want to put a shed up, the shed has to be set back, what, 3 feet? Or 3 or 5 feet from the lot line?
No, I don't think that there's a 5-foot setback on a shed, but I could double check that for you.
I thought there was a 2-foot setback on a coop off a property line as well. Did I read that?
I read it to be on the lot line, and so their question was, why is it different? And I did not have an answer for that. The other question someone had was, what do you do with the disposal of waste? And I didn't find that in there either.
We've checked on that, and just like any animal feces, if it's bagged, it can be put in the trash to be thrown away. So that's the option that we know about with that.
Thank you.
I would add to the question about the rear lot line. It does include the coop being at least 2 feet from any side or rear property line. That's in 6-301B.
Right, and I'll continue with council discussion, but if there's anyone from the public who wants to speak on this item, you can go ahead and kind of prep yourself by pressing *9 on your device, or the raise hand icon on it as well. So continuing with council questions, anything further?
Mayor,
Yes, Councilor Miller.
to Director Sheets, did I understand that correctly? That, let me get back here quick. There needs to be an amendment. Staff wasn't in agreement that the 2 1/8 fencing size was a standard that is probably appropriate, so there needs to be an amendment to that in addition to the changes that you made within the ordinance already. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So
Yes,
what
now
would
that
be,
we're allowing smaller poultry, that makes less sense to have in there.
and just to reiterate what the staff is looking for, then we're in the motion already to approve the second reading. What staff is asking for is a motion to make the changes that staff has listed in the document as well, the new red line changes, and that would put it back to a first reading tonight. Or if there are additional changes that council wants to move and pursue, as we learned from the last meeting, it might cause some additional changes or additional research needed. So then that would be a motion to postpone to the next meeting any actual decision of a new reading. So if that's not horribly confusing, I hope not. So with
Mr.
that,
Mayor?
we're still on that first, the main motion. Yes, Councilmember Cruz.
So you want clarity on, I guess it'd be section 6-304 poultry coop and 305 poultry run, to officially remove that sentence that says no permanent openings greater than 2 1/8 inches in diameter are allowed? Do we want to specifically say that? Because that wasn't redlined in my version or highlighted. Is that, Ms. Sheets, what you're referring to?
Correct. That would not be redlined in the version council has, since that was not a council amendment at the last meeting. It's
Right.
only quoted in the staff report.
Okay, then on sections 6-60, 64, 65, 66, where you have the colored animals and the sale of them for prizes and so on, those are highlighted and suggested based on review by Mr. Rogers. So we have to vote those in as well? Or motion?
That's right.
You
So
can motion, you don't have to, but you can, and it's staff's recommending, and I would recommend too, motioning forward with those changes.
Well, to get it rolling then, I'd like to make a motion that section 6-304, 6-305, remove the sentence that says no permanent openings greater than 2 1/8 inches in diameter are allowed.
So, and that's where we get kind of in the bleed, where that's this item 4. We're on item 3.
Okay.
And those would be, let's see, for item 3, it's sections 660, 664, 665, and 666.
Okay.
So, Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilmember Harding.
I would make a motion that for item 3, we include the staff recommendations for 660, 664, 665, and 666 into the ordinance.
Okay, so that's been motioned. Is there a second?
Second.
The motion and seconded. Further discussion on this amendment? Okay, seeing none, and I'm seeing no hands raised for public comment. So it's been motioned and seconded to have the amendments added, which will bring it back to tonight as being a first reading. Did I have that correct, Mr. Rogers?
correct.
So motion and seconded, and this requires a roll call vote.
No. It's just a voice vote, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, because it's an amendment, right?
Yep.
Okay. So thank you. All in favor of amending as suggested by Councilmember or motion by Councilmember Harding, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Okay, so let's see a show of hands just to be on the safe side. All in favor say aye, or raise hand with aye. So I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ayes. And for noes, I see 2 noes. So that does pass with the amendments, which brings us back to the original motion as amended. So any further discussion on that? Okay, seeing none, then it's been motioned and seconded to amend the Chapter 6 Animals Code of Ordinances with the staff's amendments from tonight. So this does require a roll call vote.
Dunn,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
DeBoer,
No.
Cruz,
Aye.
Harding,
Aye.
Dara,
Aye.
Sires.
Nay.
5 voting aye, 2 voting nay, Mr. Mayor, for the motion as amended.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. So that was item 3. Now we go to item 4, which is passing ordinance 2982, amending Chapter 6 Animals of the Code of Ordinances relative to establishing regulations for rear yard poultry in residential areas upon its second consideration. And this was contingent on 2981 as presented. That passed. So I entertain a motion to approve.
Motion
So
to
moved.
approve ordinance 2982.
The motion and seconded. So that brings us into this discussion, and I'll bring back just for the order, because Councilmember Cruz, you had motioned earlier to change sections 6304 and 6305, or to adopt the staff recommendation earlier. So would you like to
Correct.
do that again?
I'd like to make a motion, as you stated, for 6-304 and 6-305 to remove that one particular sentence reading no permanent openings greater than 2 1/8 inches in diameter are allowed
Okay.
in both sections.
All right, thank you,
Second
Councilman
that.
Cruz. There's a motion and a second. So I'll open it up for discussion of the amendment.
Happy with it.
Yep, seeing none, then I will bring us to a voice vote for this. So all in favor of the motion all in favor of the amendment, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
So I see that does pass with ayes and nays. So that takes us back to the motion now as amended with the change to 6304 and 6305. So any additional discussion on that main motion with the amendments? And then I'll open it to the public as well. If there's any comments or questions on that, you can press *9 or your raise hand icon. Okay, and I'm seeing none there. So if no further discussion, it's been motioned and seconded for passing 2982 as amended. And this requires a roll call vote.
Dunn,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
DeBoer,
Nay.
Cruz,
Aye.
Harding,
Aye.
Dara,
Aye.
Sires.
Nay.
5 voting aye, 2 voting nay, Mr. Mayor, on the motion as amended.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. And that does take those 2 items back to the first reading. So when it comes back before council, it'll be the second reading as amended, and council will provide the new language to you all cleaned up for review. And then that's over to 5. With that, talking to city staff, especially to Mr. Rogers earlier, that one is on its second reading, and I don't want these to kind of lose their connection with each other. So unless council objects, I'd like to refrain from or not discuss item 5 tonight, so that when we bring it up in the next week, it is on the same second reading as the other items. Does anyone from council object to that?
That'd be considered a tabling? Or just withdrawing?
Withdrawn.
Yeah, so just a withdrawing by the mayor. And if
Okay.
anybody does want to discuss it, I'm happy to bring it forward, but it just seems to make the most sense to hold off on it. Okay, great. So with that, then we will withdraw item 5 for consideration tonight. And that takes us over to new business. So that's under the consent calendar. Items will be acted upon by a voice vote in a single motion without separate discussion unless someone from the council or the public requests that a specific item be discussed separately. So does council wish to pull any item 6 through 14? Okay, and I'm seeing none there. So does anyone from the public wish to pull an item 6 through 14? You can press your raise hand icon or press *9 on your phone. So I'm seeing none tonight, which means that I will go ahead and read these items and then we will do a voice vote. So item 6 is receiving and filing the mayor's monthly report for January 2021. Item 7 is approving recommendation of the mayor relative to the appointment of a boards and commissions member for the Human Rights Commission. Item 8 is receiving and filing work session minutes of the January 19th, 2021 meeting. 9 is receiving and filing the committee of the whole minutes for January 19th, 2021. 10 is receiving and filing departmental monthly reports for December 2020. 11 is receiving and filing communications from the Civil Service Commission relative to several certified lists. Item 12 is approving a request for a temporary sign at 3619 Carlton Drive. Item 13 is approving the application of Tobacco Outlet Plus for a tobacco nicotine vapor permit. And then item 14 is several applications for beer permits and liquor licenses. Is there a motion to approve these items?
So moved.
The motion and seconded. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? That passes, which brings us over to the resolution calendar. And this is where items will be acted upon by a roll call vote on a single motion without separate discussion unless someone from the council or public requests that a specific item be considered separately. Does council wish to pull any items between 15 and, I believe, is it 35 on my last page here?
I'll pull 21,
37.
Mr. Mayor.
So for the Madam Clerk, what's our final item in the resolution calendar?
37.
37, yep.
I better find that last page quick. Okay. So with council, any items, which ones would you like to pull? I heard Councilmember Harding.
I'll pull 21.
Okay.
15.
So 15, 21 is Councilmember Harding, SH. And any others? Okay, so offer from the public as well. Okay, Mr. Sharp, I see you. So which item would you like to pull, sir?
I'd like to pull number 16.
Number 16, okay. So yes. And then any others? I'm seeing no other hands, so. Bear with me just one moment while I get my electronic packet here. So I can read 36 and 37. Okay. So read all items minus 15, 16, and 27. So
21, I thought.
21, yeah.
you are right, thank you. Yep. So 15, 16, and 21. So 17 is a resolution levying final assessment for costs incurred by the city to mow property at 412 North Ellen. 18 is a resolution with final assessment for costs to mow the property at 1122 West 22nd Street. 19 is resolution levying final assessment for cleaning up property at 2413 Olive Street. 20 is resolution approving and authorizing renewal of an advertising agreement with Lee Enterprises. 22 is resolution approving and adopting the State of Iowa Community Development Block Grant.
Sorry.
I'll mute you, don't worry.
Sorry.
Okay, got you muted, Kelly, don't worry. Where was I? Item 22, correct? Who remembers? Okay, oh, actually 22. So resolution approving and adopting the State of Iowa Community Development Block Grant for CARES funding. Item 23 is a resolution approving and authorizing service product agreement for CDBG CB2 CARES Act funding. And then 24 is a resolution approving a second agreement to professional services agreement with Intercog for relative funding to the CARES Act. 25 is approving execution of a service agreement for Operation Threshold for the community. 26 is a mixed-use residential zoning site plan for a senior living facility in Pinnacle Prairie. 27 is approving a final plat of Pinnacle Prairie Commercial South Phase 3, Second Edition. 28 is resolution approving and authorizing execution of a contract for completion of agreements with Oster Family Limited for Goldenrod Way. 29 is a resolution approving and authorizing contract for completion of improvements for roundabout landscaping at Prairie Parkway and Prairie View Road. 30 is a resolution approving and authorizing execution of a assignment of maintenance and repair with Celentic officials to Arabella relative to a stormwater management plan. 31 is a resolution approving and accepting completion of public improvements in the Western Home Communities 9th Edition. 32 is a resolution approving and authorizing Supplemental Agreement 3 to the Professional Services Agreement for Snyder relative to Union Road Recreation Trail Project. 33 is a resolution approving and authorizing execution for Professional Services Agreement for the Cyber Lane Extension Project. 34 is a resolution approving authorizing execution for AECOM for design services relative to the Lake Street Trail Project. 35 is a resolution setting February 15th, 2021 as a date of public hearing for the FY22 budget. 36 is a resolution receiving and filing and setting February 15th as the date of public hearing on proposed plan specification form of contract for the 2021 sanitary sewer rehabilitation project. And 37 is a resolution receiving and filing and setting February 15th, 2021 as the date of public hearing on proposed plans, specifications, form of contract for the downtown streetscape and reconstruction project phase 2. Is there a motion to approve those items minus 15, 16, and 21?
So moved.
A motion and seconded, and this requires a roll call vote.
Dunn,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
DeBoer,
Aye.
Cruz,
Aye.
Harding,
Aye.
Dara,
Aye.
Sires.
Aye.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That brings us over to item 15, which is a resolution approving and adopting the FY22 City Council Goals, Work Program, and Short-Term Financial Plan. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconded. And with that, I'll open up for council questions or discussion. So, yes, Councilmember DeBreer, please go ahead.
The reason I pulled this is because this is a document that's reflective of our goal setting sessions that we held for 2 nights. And we usually start out those meetings talking about the goals from the prior year and making any changes or deductions from those prior goals. And then we go on and make the new goals for the new year. And this document should reflect those prior goals that we continued plus the new goals. This particular document, though, has additional goals that were added to it. It might be fine goals for the mayor to have added, but they weren't discussed and they weren't considered at those goal setting sessions. And I don't think it's appropriate to put them in this document. If they want to consider several items, I think there's about 10 of them, then it should have been discussed at goal setting so that we could have decided if we as a group wanted those. And so that's my objection to this, is because it includes things that we never discussed.
Okay. So other discussion? Yes?
I can give a list of the items that I think should be withdrawn if people would like.
Well, if that's the case, if you'd want to amend to strike, or another option could be just to vote the entire document down. And if that does happen, then I'll bring it back forward without any changes in it. And that would be for the next council meeting. So it'd be without any revision. So that could be debated as well, of just voting it all down. Or there may be some additional amendments that council members want to include in this before it's finalized. So,
Mr. Mayor.
well, just a moment. I want to make sure we're covering for Councilmember DeBeer. Would you want to motion to strike all green-lined items out of the document? Or
Well, they weren't necessarily all green-lined items. They were items that we did not discuss. I mean, there were green-lined items that were things that were added that we did discuss. But then there were items that are in here that we did not discuss.
Okay.
And I think anything that we did not discuss and agree on as a goal should not be listed as goal by the council.
Okay. So I will entertain motions then.
Did Daryl have something he wanted to say first?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councilmember Cruz, go ahead.
I was just simply going to make a motion to have the document only include the items that were discussed by council at the goal setting session.
Okay. So that would be, yeah, so you wouldn't have to vote down the item. You could vote to approve. Well, I would want to know, I would want a specific list of ones you would.
Are they not color coded though?
I wouldn't feel comfortable with being the judge of what was specifically discussed in the meeting if something was alluded to or there's misunderstanding. So I would just assume, since we have the time to do it, I would personally prefer the council just vote down the entire document and then bring it back forward in the next meeting with what I think are the correct items. I don't want to leave it to chance that we put in something that you don't want to have in it.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilor Harding.
if all the green line items, some of them are just clarifications, and some of them are things that were added. If Susan has a list that she isn't comfortable with, I would request maybe that she just makes a motion to remove the items, because she said some of them weren't green line. So maybe she just would make the motion to remove the items that she felt we didn't talk about, and then we could talk about that. Would that be okay, Susan?
Yeah, for instance, goal 1, C1A, C2A and F, C2B, C4A, and C5 were not discussed, as were 6A. And in 7E, it says eliminate, or we should eliminate the word transition to part-time mayor, and just, that was the first 3 lines. And I think those 3 words, transition to part-time, should be struck.
And that was changed to consideration of part-time. So in this document that's before it in the packet, it lists consideration rather than transition.
Right, in the docket, that then the one that I have, it says transition to part-time.
And was that the document in the council packet?
It's
You'd want to use the document in the council packet, since that's what is before you for consideration.
okay. Have all the other numbers changed?
There's been no number changes.
Okay.
So bring up the document here. Just a moment, and I'll be able to show it on screen so people can see.
Yeah, because the first green line items you see are on page 94, which is items 6, 10, and 11. And we did discuss those. They're in long-term goals under B. We discussed them, so I don't have a problem with them. But C1A, 2A, 2F, 3B, 4A, all of 5, 6A, and then 7E1, it still says consideration of part-time mayor, and it should just read mayor and related city code updates.
My understanding from the amendment last time, it was to change it to consider. Is that correct for city clerk?
Yes, that's correct.
That's what council voted on, so we made that change.
I thought we also talked about 6, the resiliency to continue to develop, and also the Island Park Master Plan.
Yeah, the Island Park, I just said 6A.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
We talked about 6A, did we not? About continuing to budget for the possible ideas that come from the resilience plan. Am I remembering incorrectly?
You mean a goal setting?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we did.
Yeah.
And that's where I would have a great problem with trying to change it, just to say the things that we talked about include, because there's some even disagreement here of what was talked about and what wasn't.
Yeah, for instance, we never talked about in C2, there were a couple goals that were removed. D and E were removed, and I was hoping to get those added back in.
And do you remember which one those were? because they may have just moved to another part of the document.
I think your word was that they were, you felt they were management or should be in supervisory or something.
Oh, so yeah, you're talking about the CAF system and the firefighter ensembles in the vehicles. So yes,
Right.
that's one I would recommend removing because that is really a operational or tactical decision. Certainly council could support it, but I feel it's dangerous for council to direct staff to do specific tactical changes if it's not warranted or in their best interest.
Yeah, my fear on taking it out was simply, we want the CAF system, and by taking it out, it implies that we don't want to continue with the CAF system. Or the same with having their equipment with them.
Okay, well, something that can happen too, if we don't want to change the document itself at this point, is refer it to committee of the whole for further discussion, have a motion with those changes, and then bring it back. That could be next council meeting if you want, but certainly open to however you want to go about this. But I would need a council motion to go forward and have much further discussion on this so we don't take up the whole night with it.
Am I oh, sorry, Sue.
No, go ahead.
Mayor, am I understanding this right? That some of the green stuff you added, some of it you didn't. And I guess my frustration here is that we've had this document twice, and I can appreciate some of the changes. I mean, some of the stuff you did at the beginning with outlining links and whatnot, I think is super beneficial to the public, but I don't feel like it's been very clear that the document was modified and it wasn't outlined that this change was made right here in this document. The changes were given in a list or something along those lines in the original one, and now we've got a list that some of it was modified by your standard, but some of it wasn't, and it's super confusing. So I guess if I got my 2 cents, I guess head back to the original document and go from there. Thank you.
Now, is that a motion though? We need to have motions on the floor. So
You already have a motion.
Which original document, Mark?
The one that came out of goal setting.
Yeah.
Is what we should have received originally, and then I guess it just the whole process has been kind of frustrating in my opinion. So,
Which colored version?
Yeah, exactly.
So do you just want the green taken out, Mark? Is that what you're talking about? You just don't want the green, or you don't like the document in its current format and you want to have the document done like the old format?
I think the easiest way to move forward at this point is to go back to the original document. If the mayor would like to add things to it, then within the document, right next to something that is proposed to be taken out or added, it's listed right there. Mayor proposes this, and we can move forward. I don't believe that was done anywhere along the way. I might be wrong in that, but the whole process has been confusing, and it's taken a document, to Councilwoman DeBurr's point, that some of which was discussed, some of which was not. I mean, I don't necessarily disagree that we should support Waterloo and their strategic goals, but we don't even know what their strategic goals are. I think that can be prefaced in the document when it supports Cedar Valley taxpayers, Cedar Falls taxpayers, but nonetheless, this is just completely confusing at this point from where we left it coming out of goal setting.
Mr. Mayor?
Please go ahead.
If I read the resolution correctly, it's adopting the city council goals from the goal session. And to Susan's point that we would want to remove things that were added without discussion. It's pretty clear what we're trying to do, or Susan's concern. So I made a motion to just include the things that were discussed. So how would we clarify further, I guess, if Mr. Rogers wants to comment, or someone that would explain the procedure to slice and dice what was added and what was discussed, because we disagreed a little bit, to Simon's point, thinking we discussed something, but we did or may not have.
Real quick, unless Mr. Rogers has something to say, he can interrupt me. I haven't been on council as long as, Councilman Miller or DeBurr or even Cruz. So this is really only my second goal setting document. I've read through it. I personally feel comfortable with the way it's laid out. I like it. But again, I'm not used to seeing the old document. I think I can understand if you have some concerns with it. If you want to strike some stuff, then just make a list of what you want to strike and motion to strike it, and then we'll vote on it. It's that simple.
Agree with that. And what I've heard, I tried to write down the sections that were mentioned by Council Member DeBoer, and I can repeat those for council if someone wishes to frame that in a motion. And hopefully Jackie can help me if I miss something.
Well, don't we currently have a motion on the floor right now?
We didn't get a second.
Okay.
And also, wouldn't it be a motion to amend the current document?
Yes.
Yeah, so I brought up the current document to show what those changes are. If you'd like to walk through that document, we don't need to read all of them, but the parts that I have noted for either clarification or change, if council doesn't object, we could just walk through and strike individual items, and we'll know for specific for the future. Does that work? Or Kevin, is your intent to do them all together and vote one time?
I think a discussion would be appropriate, and then a summation that would be put into a motion all at once would be great.
Okay. So one single motion, and if I understand right, what's the next move then? Is it we need a motion to basically walk through the document and strike out individual items?
I think this is part of the discussion that the pending motion on the resolution is. So I think it'd be appropriate to go through and discuss the green, as I understand, the green changes. And then city clerk and I will try to keep careful notes, and then we can help formulate a motion if that's what council wants to do, and strike what it deems appropriate to be stricken.
Okay, that's probably the simplest surgical way to do this to get the document forward. Any objection to that?
Does this, similar to the chicken ordinance, does it move it till the next meeting before our first vote then too, or no?
Oh, we can take care of it right now.
Okay.
All right, so the first change was continue work with Met Transit to explore public transportation options, which I added, which meet the needs of Cedar Falls public transportation dependent residents at an affordable cost to the city. So the only goal there was to explain why we're exploring public transportation options, what the goal is. What are we looking for? A motion to strike, or I guess not a motion, but is there an objection? Okay, let's say it this way. Is there an objection to keep this part in the document?
Was it discussed?
Yes.
Yes. The first one that I saw that we didn't discuss was C1A.
Okay, so if no one objects, I'll go to C1A, which was City of Waterloo objectives. Support Waterloo's goals as stated in its strategic plan, which is included as reference B, when in the best interest of Cedar Falls. So does council object to including this?
Yeah, we did not discuss it, so I would request it be struck.
Okay. So I'll just say it this way. Is there any objection to striking this? Okay, so it is
So that means we don't support Waterloo's goals if it's in our interest? Is that what we're saying?
That's what comes across.
No, we're saying we didn't discuss it at the goal setting meeting.
But if we strike it, then we're not supporting it. So
No, if you don't have it in there, maybe next year at goal setting, you should add it and discuss it before you just add it in, is what I think.
But what you're saying is you don't support that goal.
No, I'm saying I never discussed the goal, and I shouldn't have it in a document that says that.
I understand that.
Yeah.
To me, if we strike it now, it means we don't support.
I see what Frank's saying. I see what Susan's saying.
This is proofreading it.
Susan's saying that since we didn't talk about it at all, she doesn't feel comfortable with it in the thing. I respect that. I see what Frank's saying, that it's not that bad a thing to support it when it benefits Cedar Falls, and if we strike it, it looks bad.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with it being in there, but if the majority of council does, then I don't have a problem if they want to remove it either.
Thank you. That was very diplomatic. I'll go along with Simon.
Okay, so 1A is stricken. Excuse me, C1A is stricken. And 4, same thing for UNI's goals in a strategic plan. Does anyone object to striking this?
I'd like to keep it in there, but again, I guess at the end we can vote for the motion or vote against it. So,
well, certainly the question really is just going to be, does anyone object to striking it? So if you don't object to striking it, then I would recommend just to keep the conversation moving along
I do. I object, but I'm only one, so keep moving.
Okay. Item 2F, this I added because there were some questions within staff about supporting internships, like how active we want to. I wanted to see if council consider that important. So continue to actively develop UNI student internship opportunities with the city to foster civic awareness and promote careers in public service. Does council wish to strike this, or does anyone object to striking this?
I'd prefer to keep it in, but.
Me too.
Okay.
Hey, I'm having some technical difficulties, but I agree with what Simon and Frank are saying, but I also agree with Susan. The point of the document was it should reflect what we discussed. So, I mean, although I get, I support these things, but if we could just stay true to what was discussed, if she's right, if we didn't discuss it, then I get her point.
So you're saying take everything out? I mean, that's if that's what we're saying, let's not read any of it and call it what it is. And next year, make sure it's everybody's in agreement. But how you pick one over the other, especially when it's working with the university or our neighboring community, and striking that but keeping a chicken thing, doesn't make sense.
Right. I guess I'm so new to it that I don't know what it looked like in the past, but I point.
What about the fact that we're talking about them right now? I mean, if you disagree with that goal, then maybe just take it out if you disagree with the goal. But if you agree with the goal, I don't see the harm in the mayor adding a good goal for the city.
I agree.
And I feel like that was my job as an executive, is to recommend these kinds of changes.
What I'd like to add, if I'm even unmuted here, I don't even know.
You're unmuted. Fine. Go ahead, Councilor.
We don't know the details of the background of many of these. They on the face look admirable and certainly noteworthy, but what's the history? What's the background? And goal setting was 2 days of 4 to 5 hours each, if not more. And the point of this resolution is to approve what was said at goal setting. So you get to the narrow focus of what was discussed at goal setting, and that's what we should be looking at. To Dara's and Harding's and Dunn's points, yeah, they're admirable, but we didn't discuss them. So it
So
should be added.
We're going to punish our neighbors.
No, Frank, you're going out on a tangent.
Please don't interrupt. Councilmember Derrick, go ahead, sir.
I get it. It's a council goal setting document, and we've all worked hard on it. The mayor sat there. Regrettably, they weren't included in our final document at that night, and hopefully the mayor recognizes that he could have presented these in some other way. But there are some things of value here that just because we want to, if somebody was a bit out of order or overzealous, to not continue to have a decent discussion about it, is this worthy or not? I get it. I get it. You don't like a single person trying to take charge when it's our thing. But like Simon says, that if it's a good idea, why would we take it out? Just because and then next year, make sure we know what the rules are, you know?
Well, Frank, are you suspending the rules then? Is that what your motion is?
I'm not making a motion. I'm just making an impassioned, logical comment that if there's a good idea on a piece of paper and we want to do it, we ought to do it. And if you don't like working with Waterloo, then vote it down. But to just say he didn't bring it up, otherwise just erase them all and just move on.
Yeah, and to that point, there is one I want to focus on for 5. We did, in the meeting, we talked about Human Rights Commission and wanting to support their work. So I included that in the document. And then economic inclusion was in, I believe it was in the document last year. And I wanted to put it into a diversity inclusion objective section to showcase that area for council to show its support and it's the work that it wants to do. Same thing for resiliency and sustainability. I can drop all these things, but I feel like from what I've seen from past council discussions and past council decisions, that's why these are in here. They're not just me saying I want to move the council in a different direction. I'm just trying to capture what I've seen for the past 3 years of council, decisions you have already made.
Mayor?
So, yes, go ahead, Councilmember Miller.
I'm going to be blunt here, and this is a council document, and I can understand Councilwoman DeBurr's point that it's a council document. It shouldn't be altered after the fact. And I think when it gets down to the core of it, I think you added some great things to this. To Frank's point, there are good ideas here. But the fact is you added things without discussing them with the council. And that's a trust issue between the council and the mayor. And I understand we have different roles and all the rest of it, but that is why this issue is coming up right here. This document has all sorts of things in it that I think most council people don't read through. I know for a fact myself over past years, there's things in here that continue from year to year to year that are assumed to be continued. Ultimately, this comes down to a trust issue and communication between the council and the mayor. And that's what I think about it.
Mr. Gaines, did you provide this to council in December for review?
Not sure what the month was, Mayor, but yes, I did.
So this was not snuck past you, and I was looking for feedback, and I require feedback from council to be able to do my job effectively. And I'm not looking for that to happen at a council meeting necessarily. I need the council to do its part as well. And
With all due respect, sir, the communication line was not open through most of last year. So
that's
did want this conversation to happen at a council meeting, straight from your mouth to me, that this needed to happen in the eye of the public. So in my opinion, this is it. And our communication is what needs to improve. So issues like this are null, because
I agree.
I feel like this could have been done in a much better fashion to where we're not spending 2 hours going line by line through this.
Well, point of order. Oh, I guess maybe let me jump in. Obviously, there's two sides here, and that's fair enough. You know, I read the document back in December. I had no issues with it. It was clear to me. Obviously, it wasn't clear to others, and I respect that. So I would just say, instead of us wasting time, let's call the question and vote it up or down. And then it can come back. If it gets voted down, it can come back with no green in it, and we go forward. Obviously, some people had issues with it, and some people don't. So let's just call. I make a motion to call the question, or however that works.
So what's on the floor currently is a resolution approving and adopting the council goals work program and short-term financial plan. So it's been motioned, and is there a second? I guess we're already on the second. Calling the question.
Yeah, call the question.
Discussion, then this requires a roll call vote.
Done.
Aye.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councilman.
We had a motion to call the question, and so that motion has to pass before we go to the underlying document.
Okay, I didn't realize that. So motion is to call the question. Is there a second to call the question?
Second.
The motion and seconded. And is this a roll call or a voice vote?
Voice vote on calling the question.
So if I call the question, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Hey,
Okay, so that passes to call the question, which means we will have a roll call vote.
For what?
Excuse me, Mayor.
This roll call vote is back to the original motion to resolution approving and adopting FY22 City Council goals, work program, and short-term financial plan.
Voting on.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Madam Clerk.
could I ask who voted nay on that call the question?
Yeah, so all nay, raise hand. If you had voted nay on the call the question.
So just Daryl?
Okay.
That required a 2/3 affirmative vote, so we're good.
Okay, thank you. So that did receive the 2/3 affirmative. Apologize for that. And so now we're back to the motion that we are going to do roll call vote for.
Done?
Aye.
So just so we're clear, Mr. Mayor, we are voting on what is presented here in front of everybody.
Yes, so we're
Sorry.
voting on what's presented here in front of everybody, no
Okay.
amendment, for approving and adopting this document. So an aye vote is to approve and adopt the document.
Okay. So Councilmember Dunn is an aye. Miller,
Nay.
DeBoer,
Nay.
Cruz,
hey,
Harding,
Aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
Sires,
Nay.
3 voting aye, 4 voting nay, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So that fails, and that brings us over to item 16, which is a resolution approving and adopting amendments to Administrative Policy Number 7, City Council Meeting Procedures. Is there a motion to approve this item?
So moved.
Been motioned, and is there a second? The motion and seconded. Open it up for council discussion.
we bring the screen back, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, yes, I apologize for that.
Thank you.
Here we go. So, council discussion, and then this was brought up by Mr. Sharp. So, Mr. Sharp, if you're still with us, I'll unmute here. Okay, are you with us, Mr. Sharp?
Yes, sir.
Okay, go right ahead, sir.
All right, Rick Sharp, 1623 Birch Street, Cedar Falls. So, I guess I'm disappointed but not surprised at the last work session to see the majority of you vote to support reducing the time to 3 minutes. I was glad to see, though, that some were swayed to come to a compromise to keep the public forum at 5 minutes, but unfortunately moved to the beginning of the meeting. I'm still an advocate for keeping the public forum at the end of the meeting. There's a lot of issues that do come up throughout the council meeting that merits discussions by the public, not to mention I know the public gets a chance to speak at every agenda item, but the council and staff have shown that at times they do not answer the question directly or avoid an answer or give, a confusing answer. And that's what I would call batting cleanup would be. The end of the public forum be a chance to have those questions raised and answered. Now that we're at the beginning of the meeting, I'm wondering if there could be a consideration then if a staff or council member doesn't answer the question directly or provides it in such a confusing manner that the speaker does not understand it, that the speaker, even if they exhausted their time, would be able to say, I'm sorry, could you please clarify your answer? I'd like to know if that would be an option to be considered. Also, considering that it sounds like this was supposed to be a temporary 1-year trial period, I'd be curious to know what is the benchmarks or the grading scale to see if the forum stays at the beginning or the end of the council meeting after this trial period. I think your guys' discussion, this item 15, kind of shows why it's good to have public forum at the end, because you've had this whole meeting and leading up to the events to discuss about what just happened to item 15, to keep talking about it. And that's kind of how we feel at the end of the council meeting, to have the public forum there, so that we can hear things being said, write them down and bring them up and hopefully get an answer for them. I mean, personally, I'm an advocate to have them, one, at the beginning to get the people that don't want to stay for the meeting, have them have their say and leave, and then have one at the end. But I understand that's not going to be an option here. Secondly, I just need clarification or admin rule number 7. I think it's item 50 or number 55. I think the duty to vote by the council members. I just like to have clarification when a council member abstains from the vote, if they need to give a reason why they abstain. I've heard council members in the past say abstain, but yet they don't really they either don't give a reason or they have a very weak reason that has nothing to do with why they're abstaining from the vote. And so I'd like to get some clarification on that too. Thank you.
Well, I'll start with the last question about abstaining to vote or abstaining from vote. For Mr. Rogers, is there any requirement from, I don't know if it's the state or parliamentary rules about abstaining that they have to give a reason?
There's another rule that the administrative rule, possibly an ordinance as well, that states that council members shall vote on all items. And so in order to abstain, there would basically have to be a conflict of interest. Council member would be best to say, I'm abstaining because of a conflict of interest. They don't have to go into it because council members saying that is determinative.
Right. Okay. Any comments on the other questions? I know for the timing, does any council member want to chime in on the metrics that are being used? I'll allow council comment on it since it's more a council decision than a staff decision, but not necessary. Okay.
Is it a trial?
Yes, Councilmember Dunn, go ahead.
Is it a trial? I know we kind of talked about that, but is it officially a trial for a year?
It doesn't have a sunset clause built into it, but my understanding was that when council discussed this in goal setting and these changes, they wanted to wait or see how it went for a year and then look at it again potentially in the next goal setting session. But did I capture that correctly?
Okay.
So it'd be a next goal setting, we discuss it again.
And I think as a metric, public feedback will be important. We'll see how the meetings flow. If citizens reach out, I know if citizens reach out to me saying, oh, I like speaking at the beginning, or I really miss speaking at the end, I'm going to take all that into account. So I would think also at the public forum at the beginning, if we get a lot of people saying, I'd rather speak at the end consistently, that'll be another public metric. So just public participation and communication will be my public metric.
Okay. Anyone
Mr.
else?
Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Cyrus, go ahead, sir.
I like that it's a trial basis. I'd like to see maybe 3 minutes at the end. Just the more input we get from citizens, the better I like it.
So
That's
would you
all I
like
have
to
say.
you can amend the document to add in if you motion to add 3 minutes of public forum at the end?
I would like to do that. I'll make a motion to add 3 minutes to the end in a public forum. So we would have 5 minutes in the beginning and then 3 minutes at the end.
Okay. So it's been motioned and Councilmember Harding seconded. So I'll open it for just any discussion and then we'll do an up down vote on that. Yes, Councilmember Cruz, go ahead, sir.
For the most part, I like that idea as long as the 3 minute discussion is pertinent to topics that were discussed during that council meeting.
So that would be an additional amendment, the amendment to the amendment, because you're asking to put restricted conditions on what can be discussed at that public forum. And that's not, I understand that's not what Councilmember Cyrus had specifically mentioned. So
could I make a motion to amend Mr. Cyrus' motion to limit discussion to be, what's the word?
Germane?
Germane to, germane to the topics
Agenda.
presented.
Okay, so it couldn't be a general discussion. It would have to be narrowly tailored to items that occurred on the agenda. Did I catch that correctly?
Right. To Mr. Sharp's point, that's what he was saying. Things come up that weren't answered. And I'd like to address that concern of his.
Okay.
General topics would be in the beginning.
All right. Your motion makes sense. So that's an amendment to the 3 minutes at the end that the items must be related to the agenda that was discussed that evening. So is there a second to that?
Second.
I'm seeing a second from Councilmember DeVere. And additional discussion or questions on that amendment to the amendment? Seeing none, then okay, I'll repeat it. So this is the 3 minutes or 3 minutes to the end plus items must be on the agenda. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, so I saw 6 aye and 1 nay. So that does pass and brings us back to the amendment. So now we're looking at the whole 3 minutes with the items on the agenda. So is there a motion to approve that amendment? Excuse me, that is already motioned, right, Mr. Rogers?
You have to go back to the amendment, so that would include the restriction. This vote will include the restriction.
Okay.
So now it's 3 minutes at the end with the restriction.
Okay, thank you. So any further discussion on it as amended?
Just what
Yes.
would the I'm okay with kind of narrowing the last public forum to stuff in the meeting. How would we? Who's going to make the call? I guess it would be kind of obvious in most cases. But what if something we talked about during the meeting made them think of another question? Does that count? Is that going to be admissible, or is that just going to be a call by the mayor?
Yeah, it's presiding officer discretion. So I'd be fairly lenient, but
Okay.
still wanting to have it some way tied back to.
Tied to the meeting. Fair enough. I was just curious.
Mayor, if I could.
Yes, Councilmember Miller, go ahead.
I just want to make a point. My opposition to this is not because I don't want to hear from the public. I just wanted to say once again that our phones are available, emails available, social media is available. There are a lot of opportunities for the public to interact with council people. And to the speaker's point a little while ago, I think there are a number of questions that come up anytime, whether staff speaking or whether the public's speaking. But in many cases, staff isn't prepared to answer a question that comes up, whether in a public forum or whether just on any specific item when the public can speak on it. They don't have that data in front of them. So I think there's a lot of situations where that return or follow-up call is expected. And as far as I can tell, staff does follow through with those phone calls. So it might not happen on camera, but I believe staff does a pretty good job of following up with the public, and as well as council in most regards, in trying to stay in communication with the public. So,
Okay, thank you. And just to be clear, where this would occur with this amendment would be in the existing position immediately after council updates and before adjournment, and then we'd have executive session after. So correct me if anyone's understanding is different. Okay, so any other discussion from council on this? If not, then I'll go to the public. Okay, anything first? Seeing none. So I see TJ Frein's hand, and go ahead, Mr. Frein. Just name and address for the record, please, sir.
TJ Frine, 1319 Austin Way. I know it's been talked about the 5 minutes before, and now it sounds like maybe sometime after. The discussion was, well, these people can leave the meeting after they're done speaking if they want to. On the same token, it was said that, we have so many other ways to contact council members that these people really don't need to be speaking after or speaking as much during the meeting. So it's kind of a double-sided coin, if you will, because those same people that need to speak and get out of there also have those same avenues to speak to council members. And I'm not saying that I don't want anything at the front, but to say that the people that speak consistently or that speak for up to 5 minutes have other avenues is you should be saying that same thing to those same people. Anybody that wants to address council, whether it be at the beginning so they can leave or at the end because things go on in between, all have those same avenues. But the only avenue that is 100% effective is the public forum at the council meeting, unless there's going to be some kind of accountability standard for a response, which I don't see because everybody has lives and everybody gets busy during the week. The public forum is the only place for you to have everybody in the room at the same time for a discussion. So that's my 2 cents. Thanks.
Mr. Frank. And I believe it's Mr. Skane. So go ahead, sir. I got you unmuted. So just name and address for the record to be official here. He's still working on getting unmuted here. Yes, I can see you unmuted, so go ahead, sir.
Okay, Jim Skane, 2215 Clay Street.
Evening, Mr. Skane.
I taught parliamentary procedure for years, and the Rogers version of parliamentary procedure is really out of it, because the motion that was made to call the question is purely a situation where a person says, "I want to vote."
Mr. Skane, I'd have to comment on here that this is related just to this one item. You could bring this comment up in the forum.
It is related to it.
Mr. Skane, I'm going to ask you not to interrupt, sir. So do you have an item related to this, or a question related to this item, which is admin policy 7?
Yes. But one, it is amazing that the reason the public forum is moved to the beginning is because people can make what comment they want and then leave. I mean, that doesn't indicate that they're very interested in public input. And then also the fact that as it stands now, the one at the end will be 3 minutes and will be additionally limited. And of course, anytime the word germane is used in this way, it violates the First Amendment of the Constitution. And people can, rely on that, but it's not constitutional. But it's really a need. There is clearly a need to have a clear use of parliamentary procedure, like to call the question. And also, on this matter of voting, if somebody does not vote, does not vote for or against, but abstains, an abstention is a vote. So it is wrong to say that they have to vote for or against, because abstention is a vote. And therefore, that person who abstains has voted.
Thank you, Mr. Skane.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. I see no other hands, so I will bring it back to council. And I have one question, just as a thought for who's allowed to speak in the second part. I know it was discussed when we talked about this previously. Council had a desire to limit people to either speak in the beginning or the end. And I just wanted to remind council that would be an option on this, but it's not been brought up. As it stands now, a person could speak at the beginning of the meeting and speak at the end of the meeting. Same person. So any other motions that you would want to make for amendments? If not, then I will look to take a roll call vote. So final comments. Okay, seeing none, then it's been motioned and seconded to approve and adopt the amendments to admin policy number 7 with amendments, which would make a 3-minute time limit for an end public forum session as well, which has to be related to the agenda items on topic. So all in favor, excuse me, this requires a roll call vote.
Dunn?
Nay.
Did you say nay?
Nay, yeah.
Okay. Miller?
Nay.
DeBoer?
Nay.
Cruz?
Aye.
Harding?
Aye.
Dara?
Nay.
Sayers?
Aye.
2 voting aye, 5 voting nay, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And that leads us over to over to item 21, which is a resolution approving and adopting the recommendation of the Parks and Recreation Commission relative to a recreation fee schedule to become effective March 1st, 2021. Is there a motion to approve this item?
So
So
moved.
move.
The motion and seconded. Open it for council discussion. I know Councilmember Harding brought this forward, so do you have a comment on it?
I just had a question and a small comment. I understand where they're going with it. The memo was very clear and descriptive. I appreciate it. My one thing that I wished would have been, and it's probably just petty, so I apologize, but reading this report, I was trying to figure out what the gray meant versus the green. I mean, I figured it all out, but a key would have been really nice. So to figure out, what that meant. But my question was, I didn't see on the list, and correct me if I'm wrong, the rates for the rec center for city staff and elected officials. Should that not be on there? Is that not ever listed?
I believe that that's in the overall fee resolution that's adopted annually around the June timeframe. So we were just proposing of any other changes at this time.
So so since there's going to be no fee changes to there'd be no fee changes to city and elected officials. That's why it wasn't on the okay, that's fine. I was just curious.
Okay, any other questions or discussion from council or from the public? Okay, seeing none, then it's been motioned and seconded and requires a roll call vote.
Dunn,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
DeBoer,
Aye.
Cruz,
Aye.
Harding,
Aye.
Dara,
Aye.
Sires,
Aye.
all voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Mayor, point of order.
Yes, point of order. Go ahead.
Were there not two amendments proposed on 16 to where we still need to vote on the original motion or the original resolution? Or am I misunderstanding something there?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Rogers, but we voted, there was a voice vote to amend the amendment. Then we voted to amend, and then with a voice, and then we went to the final vote with all changes incorporated. So I believe that we captured everything.
I don't recall the vote on the second amendment. The vote I recall hearing was the restriction on the 3 minutes, which passed.
Mhm.
And then I don't recall a vote on the amendment to move public forum for a second session of 3 minutes with restrictions.
That's what I thought the second vote was, the 2 to 5. It failed. Was I misunderstood?
So if that's the case, then if that failed, then there's been no action on the resolution.
So do you need a motion, or that motion is still on the table to approve the original resolution then?
Right.
correct?
Because as it would stand now, my understanding was it was going to drop any changes to 15, or excuse me, to 16 for admin policy 7. So it would be appropriate then to go back and vote on adopting admin policy number 7 without any changes. Is that where we're at?
That's what I thought.
Failed?
I believe so.
Okay. That's what I understand it to be then too. Does anyone hear it any differently? So Councilmember Dara, did you have a comment? Okay. So that's where I understand we're at now. So Councilmember DeBoer?
Wouldn't it goes back then to with the two changes that were written in red, where we move the public forum to the beginning and then something about when 4 members want to contact the city clerk.
Right. And then some section changes as well. So it basically is the original document then. And that's the original document is proposed in the packet. So I apologize for that. So we would need to vote on that, which is there any additional discussion for the main motion that was before us for approving and adopting amendments to admin policy 7? So seeing none, if this is approved, then the changes that were listed in the document that was in the packet, those would become official, but nothing else that council discussed. So this is a motion and seconded, no further discussion, and requires a roll call vote.
Dunn,
Aye.
Aye.
DeBoer,
Aye.
Cruz,
Aye.
Harding,
Aye.
Dara,
Aye.
Sires,
Nay.
6 voting aye, 1 voting nay, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and appreciate that point of order, Councilmember Miller. Looking at having gone through 21, that brings us over to item 38, which is ordinances, passing an ordinance amending Chapter 2 administration of the Code of Ordinances relative to applicability of Robert's Rules of Order upon its first consideration, or suspending the rules requiring ordinances to be considered at 3 separate meetings, and it requires at least 6 aye votes, and then passing the ordinance upon its third and final consideration. So I'll entertain one of those motions here.
I'll motion to suspend the rules for this, and this be considered the third reading, or changing the ordinance to read as it reads on the resolution. What is it, chapter 12, or revision 12 instead of revision 10?
Right, then that's all it's doing is saying addition 12 in the rules, just so that we're using the same book, which right now it's referencing a version that was from back in 2000. It'd be hard to get a copy. So it's been motioned. Is there a second?
Second.
A motion and seconded. Any discussion on this?
Pretty logical.
Okay, so no further discussion. So it's been motion and seconded and requires a roll call. Excuse me, I'll open it to the public. I see Mr. Skane has his hand up, so go ahead, Mr. Skane.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
this particular 38 makes no sense because it says that if an ordinance comes up, the council will have a choice of which of these they want to put into effect. But it is already something that the council has done, is to have the 3 readings, but as they did with the sign at the Farm Fleet, they moved to suspend the rules to require the 3 separate meetings, and then they passed that Farm Fleet could have the sign. So as it's stated now, it just has absolutely no meaning and no clarity. I mean, those second and third items can be accomplished with that suspend the rules that does require a 2/3 vote, and it just doesn't make any sense to even consider this item, and certainly not with the A or B options. I think it would lead to a lot of things being passed quickly that should be looked at more carefully. And what happens when you do it with suspending the rules when it first comes up is that you take out the public, because the public has no way to discuss the item, because suspending the rules is not debatable. So I would respectfully submit that this particular item be voted down, and that you continue as you are doing now.
Thank you, Mr. Skane. I will note that the public has an opportunity to comment on this item, and the previous speaker was commenting as part of that public comment time. So any other public questions or discussion on this item?
Yeah.
Okay, seeing none, then it's been motioned and seconded to amend Chapter 2 of the Code of Ordinances with regard to Robert's Rules of Order, and to pass it upon its third and final consideration by suspending the rules. This requires a roll call vote.
Mr. Mayor, excuse me.
Excuse me.
We have to approve of suspending the rules with a 3/4 vote first,
Okay.
then a
So-
roll call on the ordinance.
Correct.
So is there a motion to suspend the rules?
We have,
We
I
have
have that.
motioned and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
nope.
Roll call.
What happens here?
Roll call.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. We have to do a roll call on this.
Point of order, Mayor. Before we get into this,
Please, Councilor Miller.
do we not
Not
need
debatable.
do we not need to approve the original ordinance? Because there wasn't a motion for that. It went straight into suspend the rules.
But suspend the rules is A for a B, which would be passing the ordinance, wouldn't it?
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't need to have 38, the first part of it. We're in the or section only, correct?
Yeah,
Correct.
we're in 38A.
Okay.
All right, back to the task at hand. It's been motioned and seconded. And are we allowed now to go to a roll call vote, Madam Clerk?
Yes, we can take a roll call vote on the suspension.
Suspending the rules.
Yes. So if everybody's ready, I'll call that.
Yes, Madam, go ahead.
Dunn,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
DeBoer,
Aye.
Cruz,
Nay.
Harding,
Aye. Sorry.
it's okay. Dara,
Aye.
Sires,
Nay.
5 voting aye, 2 voting nay, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, it requires at least 6 ayes, so that fails, which now brings us back to passing an ordinance amending Chapter 2 Administration of the Code of Ordinances relative to applicability of Robert's Rules of Order upon its first consideration.
I'll make a motion on the first consideration.
Okay, it's been motioned and seconded. And any further discussion on this? Okay, seeing none, then this, I believe, requires a roll call vote.
Correct.
Okay,
Dunn,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
DeBoer,
Aye.
Cruz,
Aye.
Harding,
Aye.
Dara,
Aye.
Sires,
Aye.
all voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
thank you, Madam Clerk. That brings us over to item 39, which is allowing bills and payroll for February 1st, 2021. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Open up for council discussion. Public comment. You press *9 on your phone or the raise hand icon. Seeing none, then it's been motion and seconded and requires a roll call vote.
Dunn,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
DeBoer,
Aye.
Cruz,
Aye.
Harding,
Aye.
Dara,
Aye.
Sires,
Aye.
all voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Clerk, and do we have any city council referrals tonight?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councilmember Cruz.
Thank you. I'd like to have a work session on, or excuse me, a committee of the whole meeting on developing uniform standards for participants in the Sturgis Falls event. We're dealing with public facilities, public services with police, fire, and ambulance, potentially garbage collection, et cetera. I think we need to move this along, and there's a bit of an impasse. So we need standards that everybody can agree upon and the city can agree upon.
Okay, so I understood that's a motion for a work session to develop uniform standards. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Did you say
So-
work session or committee of the whole?
Committee of the
Well-
whole.
Okay. Well, it's Councilmember Cruz's. So do you want to have a whole or work session?
I guess they're both similar, but some comment on whether we should do a work session or not.
Sure. Well, work session is very much more informal. It's just open discussion. And typically is council really just germinating ideas. With committee of the whole, as I understand it, it's more that we're expecting staff to bring something to the table, offer a presentation. We have some discussion, but then we're looking for a motion typically out of that, some specific direction forward.
Mr. Mayor, isn't public input limited in a work session as well?
It is, correct. typically we don't have public comment in a work session.
Okay, let's have committee of the whole then.
Okay, so it's a motion for committee of the whole to discuss or present work or uniform standards for Sturgis Falls events. Did that capture it well?
Participants in the Sturgis Falls event.
Okay, so motioned, and is there a second for that?
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any further council discussion?
I would ask,
Yes, Councilor Harding, go ahead.
I see the sentiment. I support Sturgis Falls, but I would ask, is this what we want? You know, Sturgis Falls is not technically affiliated with Cedar Falls, the city. So is this something we want to spend city money on and staff time on doing when it's a private entity? Or, you know, you see what I mean here? To me, it kind of gets to a conflict of interest almost, or we're spending taxpayers' dollars and city time and city staff on bringing forward ideas for participants in Sturgis Falls when it seems to me like Sturgis Falls should do that.
Is the Sturgis Falls Parade entirely externally driven, or is there a significant city component to it as well for organizing and controlling and saying who's going to be in it, that sort of thing?
Yeah.
I would throw out that they're using city streets for blocking city streets, or using police, ambulance call, garbage pickup. I mean, the entire event ties up and consumes a lot of city services. So there appears to be an impasse on moving forward here and how to do so. And I think it would be wise to facilitate some standards that the participants, whoever they might be, could have as a guideline going forward for this one weekend out of the year. That's a huge event for 45 years.
Mayor?
Can you think of an example of like some kind of guidance you'd want a participant to have? Like something you just we know it better since the staff knows kind of what you're looking for. Is it like you're not allowed to throw candy from a parade float, that sort of thing? Or is it more?
Well, there's been proposed guidelines by the Sturgis Falls organization for dealing with revenue from beer sales and how it pays for the functions, the Kids Way and parade and all the other expenses. So there's uniformity there and expectations on that. Shop, coordinating band venues, because we get arguments over certain bands that are well liked by the community or a feature of the Sturgis Falls event. Those types of things. Royalties that got to pay for the music royalties of the music played, beer tickets, uniformity there.
Is that the city's job though?
Mayor?
Yeah, Councilmember Miller.
I think that to Mr. Harding's point there, similarly, I mean, if you set up a uniform standard for anybody that wants to participate during the Sturgis Falls event, does Sturgis Falls not have to participate? And you keep coming back, Councilman Cruz keeps going back to using city streets and using city services. I don't believe there's a set dollar amount that Sturgis Falls gives to the city for using those same services. So I think you're treading on really tricky water here, trying to get in and have the city legislate, say, a live to 9, just to throw it out there, has to pay for city services, but Sturgis Falls doesn't?
I say that it doesn't. There's expenses that the Sturgis organization pays for to use public facilities and public services.
I feel like there's all sorts of unintended consequences, and I'm not a huge fan of those terms, but I feel like there can be some serious implications here that change how Sturgis has to operate too. So,
well, and let's keep it focused. I appreciate the discussion. I think we want to be careful that we don't go too much into what would be discussed in this session. So,
fair enough.
The bigger question then is this something worth bringing forward to committee of the whole for further discussion based on what we know now? Do we need additional information, council, from Councilmember Cruz? for what he wants to discuss, or are we at the point now just debating whether it's a good idea to have standards, which would be the time for that meeting?
I have enough information to vote.
Okay. Does anybody else need additional info for this this referral to be able to vote up or down on it? Okay, sounds like we're okay then. Then it's been motioned and seconded to have a work session to discuss the standards for Sturgis Falls participants.
A committee of the whole.
In committee of the whole. I apologize. Is this a voice or a roll call?
Voice.
Okay, so all in favor of holding this committee of the whole session, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, so I'd like to see a show of hands for aye. So I see 2 aye, and for nay, 5 nay. So that fails, and I'll look for other referrals from council.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilor Badera.
I had intended on making a referral in an earlier discussion, but it's no longer an issue because we're not pursuing it. But I wouldn't mind having broaching a subject here and coming up with some way of dealing with it. But over the last, and I don't want to pontificate, I know I'm just supposed to make a referral, but over the last several weeks, some pretty ugly things have happened in our community. And I won't go into what they are, but I will also say that over the last few months, we have lost, I don't know, 4, 5, or 6 human resource, not human resource.
Human rights.
Yeah, lost members of that commission. And the combination of those things, as well as one of the outcomes or one of the recommendations from our resilience plan, as it is at this point, was encouraging more diversity, encouraging more affordable housing. And I think based on those issues and others, human rights in this community need to be discussed. We have a Human Rights Commission that I think is kind of flying blind right now. I'm not being critical of them. They're asked to do some difficult things, but they're not getting a lot of guidance from us. And so what I wanted to do was, and one of the goals that the mayor had was to continue to support the Human Rights Commission. I think we need to take that a step further and come up with some format where somehow the council, we have a discussion among ourselves. What is our role? What do we think the role of the Human Rights Commission is? Also meeting with them we got 5 new people who have never been on it and 4 people, and they're replacing people to quit. So how do they know what their role is or what our expectations are? So somehow I feel like we need to provide some guidance, get some clarity on what our expectations are of that group. So what I was going to recommend or ask for referral was to have at least a council member. I know we have a joint meeting coming up in a couple of weeks. Maybe there's something we can do at that meeting to really have a heart-to-heart talk about what are our expectations of the Human Rights Commission. And if they don't have the knowledge and the skills now, how do we get that to them? But we, as a city, can't continue to pretend that these aren't issues in our town. And so I'm sorry I'm rambling. I'm also pretty passionate about it. And I want to see this group come up with a way to begin to provide some leadership to make us a more inclusive community and give this group, the Human Resource Commission, Human Rights Commission, some content to work with and some skills to do it.
So would you have a motion to bring forward for that then, or is this more like a council update kind of topic?
Well, or maybe a discussion at this point, how can we make our joint meeting with them in 2 weeks a bit more purposeful? To maybe have a discussion about where do we go from here? What are our expectations? What's the state say their role is? What are the issues? I mean, I think it needs to be like a task force or something that over a period of time clarifies their role, identifies issues, clarifies roles, gets some training. It needs to be a purposeful organization, and we have people that are dedicated to it, but they don't really know what we're asking them to do.
So we could have a motion to entertain a task force, or develop a task force. At this
Mayor?
point. We just need to have something to move forward. Yes, Councilmember Miller. And,
I'll step in on this too. I guess I'll make that motion that
okay, perfect.
we have staff come back with some type of the city, I think, was super successful with the rental ordinance task force and PSO task force for that matter, with Frank at the helm nonetheless. But I think we should have a task force put together, or have staff outline how that process can go, to assist and work with the Human Rights Commission to, I think the goal has changed for the Human Rights Commission over the past couple of years. I think not due to anything in particular, but everything in particular. And I think as a city, we need to help guide those folks, especially with the turnover, as to how do we want that to look in Cedar Falls, Iowa. So
yeah, now this is in council, like sort of discussion mode. So I've seen the motion to create a task, or is it city to create a task force?
yes.
Okay. So motion, is there a second for that?
Second that.
Okay, so Dara seconds, and then for further discussion, any other input from council or for Councilmember Miller, if you'd want to continue on?
Nope.
Okay, so motion and seconded for a task force to be created by staff. We'll have to determine membership, or staff will have to. We'll talk with council members about that. And
yeah, I think, excuse me, Mayor, but I do think defining what that looks like, maybe besides just council members, staff, and board members, getting some community leaders or some other kinds of expertise to begin to, work hand in glove with the Human Rights Commission. They still have a job to do, but maybe raising the bar with what our expectations are and what their skill level is, and beginning to engage the public in some real issues in our community.
so would anybody object to considering this like a steering committee made up of some of the key stakeholders in the community to help provide guidance for the Human Rights Commission?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And like Frank said, I think maybe comprised of 1 or 2 council members and people from the community, 1 or 2 commissioners, and some staff, a round group like that really, gives a direction that they want to see. And like Frank said, raise the bar, and let's come back with a report of what we want to see happen.
Can I ask another question, Mayor?
Oh, Councilmember Miller first.
Okay, sorry.
I was just going to add, the folks on the Human Rights Commission may very well raise the bar for us in all of this, so I don't want to take anything away from them.
No, not at all. I want them to know. I want them to know we support their mission, but we all need to be on the same page as to what that mission is and how we get there.
I agree. I didn't mean to imply that they're not going to raise the bar. I just
no, I don't think you did. I just
see where you guys are.
Cite that those folks are plenty well educated and whatnot as far as being appointed to that role. Anyway.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, for sure. No, I agree with where Frank's and Councilmember Miller are going, though. It's an important issue. It's something we need to step up and do right now, and throw a lot of stuff at it and work towards something. So I agree.
Okay, and very similar to the firefighter task force, it would be limited in scope. It would have a charge of what they're expected to come together with, and then hopefully a timeline or a table to say we want to see this, the results from you of what the commission should be doing by X date, and then disbanding that group basically once their final report is submitted, and then that goes to the Human Rights Commission. Does that capture it okay?
Yeah, I think the timeline is good, but don't make it too short. There's a lot to deal with, and there's a lot of input. So, but yes, they can go on forever. But you do want, for instance, like next fall, have something in place. But and I'd be happy to talk if staff, I don't want to put staff on the spot, but if they think the idea of a task force isn't good, but my experience with them is there's a council member or two, and then staff members with some expertise that and understand the legalities of everything to kind of guide the group through it. But it's a very effective model, I think.
Okay. So motion and second. Any final discussion? Okay, so then all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, that passes. And so that will occur. We'll provide more information as it's available. We'll make it a staff meeting to get this task force together. So with that, pulls us over to council updates. Any further updates from council?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilmember Cyrus, go ahead, sir.
when we opened up the Green Hill Trail, which I think is a fantastic thing, I've seen a tremendous amount of people that are out on that particular bike path. Code enforcement got on the people on South Main from Green Hill to the Paw Park. And a couple of them along there said that they had never cleaned that sidewalk in 13 years. And that was the entire time he had lived there. And with our low snowfall, I can see where the plows didn't cover it up like they normally did. But the thing about that is that sidewalk was put in by the city, I believe, and is about 20 feet from their property line. Now, they call that adjoining property sidewalk, but yet 20 feet seems like quite a distance. I'd like to see the city go ahead and hit that too, from Green Hill down to the Paw Park. It kind of turns over there right by the bridge. And it would be nice to eventually have that be a 10-foot wide trail as well, maybe when they redo the corner of Green Hill and South Main. But it's kind of a burden on the people there. They clean their front sidewalk, and now they have the one on the back side, which is quite a ways away. And now they have to burden of cleaning that one as well. I just wondered if the council couldn't kind of get together and see a way we could clean that. This is kind of a particular year where we didn't have a lot of snow, but we do now. So that's kind of something that's just come up for me. I don't know if anybody else has been called or not.
I have Dave.
Okay.
And it is inconvenient. Several of those people have a fence, a barrier behind them. They got to go, if they have a snowblower, they got to go all the way down the end of the block and come up. So even if we arrange something where there's an annual fee for us to clean it off or something, might be a consideration. But I don't know. You start that there, will we have every neighbor wanting the same thing? But I share the concern.
Well, if it was made a bike path 10 feet wide, then the city would clean it, which really, from where it goes, Green Hill down there to the Paw Park, and then would hook into another trail. That might be something to look into. And just to hit it with a pickup truck and a plow would be quite good. So that's my thought. I'd like to see them not have the burden, but yet see as many sidewalks as we can opened up for trail walkers during the pandemic.
All right, thank you, Councilor Cyrus. For any other council updates for tonight? Looking at staff updates then, I know we have some info on our snow ordinance or snow 48-hour emergency ordinance. So go ahead, Mr. Gaines, floor is yours.
Mayor, I'll start off and then I'll turn it over to Director Schrage and have him talk a little bit about the snow removal downtown in College Hill. But to start off with, if council recalls, I believe it was back in December, they put a resolution together to suspend the parking enforcement in the downtown and College Hill area. And that was to go until April 1st. And so one of the things that I'm doing today is just making the council aware as we get closer to that March 1st deadline or March 1st time period, city staff's going to work with Community Main Street and College Hill to put together a campaign for the month of March, letting patrons know that paid parking will be up again and starting again April 1st. So if there was any changes that were going to happen, we would want to make sure that those changes would happen before we started that informational campaign.
Thank you, Mr. Gaines. Anything else? Or is it Director Schrage had some comments?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to do a quick reminder to everyone. We issued a snow emergency earlier today for the downtown and College Hill areas with the significant snowfall we had about a week ago today, and then as well as this last weekend. A lot of that material we need to get moved out of there to allow for additional snow storage in future events. So beginning tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Until Wednesday morning at 7 a.m. we'll be removing snow in those areas. So.
Okay, thank you. With that brings us over to item 40 to approve it. It's an executive session to discuss property acquisition per Iowa Code Section 21.5 to discuss purchase or sale of real estate where premature disclosure could reasonably be expected to increase the price the government body would have to pay for that property or reduce the price the government would receive for that property following public forum. Is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Motion seconded. Any discussion? Then this requires a roll call vote.
Dunn,
Aye.
Welcome back.
Miller,
Aye.
DeBoer,
Aye.
Cruz,
Aye.
Harding,
Aye.
Dara,
Aye.
Sires.
Aye.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And pushes us over into public forum, which speakers will have one opportunity to speak for up to 5 minutes on topics germane to city business. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak tonight? So I see Andrew Schroll. So go ahead and just give name and address for the record, please, Mr. Schroll.
Hi, this is Andrew Schroll speaking. I live at 930 Newman Avenue.
Evening, sir. Go ahead, sir.
I'm speaking on behalf of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. As the current chair of the committee, I'd like to offer a few comments on the Main Street reconstruction since there was not time for comment in the committee of the whole meeting. And I'm also happy to provide information in the ongoing discussions. We of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee strongly recommend that the council adopt a Main Street reconstruction plan that includes bicycle lanes for several reasons. Bike lanes on Main Street are a sound solution that meets the growing need of safe bicycle routes for transportation. This route is a critical corridor in the bicycle network plan to allow access from population centers to the downtown core of the city. More people are using bikes to get to downtown businesses than ever. Main Street is less hilly, more direct, and more continuous compared to other parallel routes, including the existing trails, which have a steep and troublesome interchange at 18th Street. Including the lanes on Main Street would encourage more people to choose biking over driving, in turn helping with downtown parking demand. It will also promote harmony between drivers and cyclists by giving cyclists a dedicated lane. Taking this rare opportunity to improve bicycle infrastructure will help Cedar Falls continue to attract talent and businesses to the area. In honor of the bicycle-friendly reputation that Cedar Falls enjoys, we must include in our vision to expand this reputation beyond recreational use into safe commuting for all ages and abilities. Making it safe and simple to use means that more will come. To address a couple of the particular questions from the council in today's committee of the whole meeting, we have had discussions since the 2016 to 2017 timeframe. For example, during our October 1st, 2019 meeting, we reaffirmed the recommendation of bike lanes as part of the downtown visioning process. There were also a couple of comments about current low amounts of bike traffic currently on Main Street. That's because biking next to a curb on a 4-lane road is dangerous. The bike traffic will come if accommodations are made, safer accommodations are made. That said, we appreciate the analysis-based approach taken by the city staff and the recognition of the importance of this Main Street route for enabling direct access to businesses and year-round use. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schroll. And thank you very much for your service on the Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Committee.
You bet.
So we have Mr. Sharp also. Go ahead and just name and address for the record again, please, sir.
Rick Sharp, 1623 Birch Street. So whatever happened on that vote on item number 16 is a reason why we need to have public forum at the end of the council meeting. From what I understood, an amendment was made or a motion was made to add 3 minutes at the end of the meeting. And then another motion to amend that was to make sure that the speakers, that the topics would be germane to whatever happened in the council meeting. I thought that vote passed 6-1. Then there was a vote, then I guess to make that, to approve that. And that vote failed 4-3. So either the council members did not know exactly what they were voting on, because I don't understand how you can go from 6-1 to approve something and then 4-3 to vote it right down. Or again, if we're just wasting everybody's time, then if the majority didn't want it, then why do we pass it 6-1? And then we finally passed the original amendment 5 minutes at the beginning of the council meeting, 4-3. So if somebody could kind of clarify that for me, how that played out, how we went from 6-1 to support 3 minutes at the end to 4-3 that were against it. Again, that's why we need to have this public forum at the end, so stuff like this can get addressed and get clarified. Secondly, another topic I want to get addressed is, for years I've seen at the end of the council meeting where you're voting on bills and payroll, but yet every council agenda I have never seen payroll. And there are some of us out here that would like to see payroll. We would like to see what people are earning. We would like to see what the overtime usage is in various departments. I mean, you guys don't know what you're voting on. If it's not in the agenda, how do you know what you're voting on payroll? So either we start adding payroll to the agenda, or we just drop that verbiage entirely and just say bills. You know, I shouldn't have to get a FOIA request. I shouldn't have to pay additional money to get the payroll for the last year to see what various employees in various departments are going to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. I'm leery of touching the first part for the maneuvering that went around to get to the admin 7 vote, but would anybody else want to jump in on that? I am seeing none.
I think, okay, this is the way I understood it was, okay, the initial motion, or the thing that was in the recommendation that was on the packet, was to add the change the public forum to the beginning, and to have 4 council members request a special meeting, and maybe something else. So then it was, what's that?
Just some seconds.
Okay. So then I think the motion came up to have a public forum at the end as well. And then there was an amendment to have that only be to business that was talked about in the meeting. So then the first vote was to, in my understanding, was to have the 3 minutes and to have it only to be about the business that was talked about during the meeting. And we all voted on that. And it was 6-1. And then we went back to the original, the second part was just to do the 3 minute, or the 2 sessions, right? The 2 public forums.
Yep, it was to add there was an amendment to add the public forum to the end.
Okay, and then we almost missed it because we voted that down, right?
That failed 2-5.
Okay. And then we almost missed it, but then we realized we needed to go back and actually do the original thing, which was number 16, saying we're moving public forum to the beginning and the other stuff.
That
right?
That's the one.
Okay.
Yep, so that's the narrative.
Government is slow and intentional.
Nicely done, Miss Dunn.
Taking better notes.
And I'm having like major problems with my computer. So I'm sorry if my face was somewhere else.
Thank you. So I see Mr. Skeen. Go ahead and name and address for the record, please, sir.
Jim Skane, 2215 Clay Street. I have a number of concerns. One is that on some of the agenda items, there was produced on the screen language about that item, but that wasn't done for everything. And actually, with the wording of the agenda item, it's only like a headline that says nothing about what's contained in it. And it would be good if for each agenda item there was a screen that indicated what the language of that particular item was. It should be no difficulty because that process is easily put together. Also, after listening to Councilwoman Dunn, I thought that what happened was that the changes were voted down, but now it seems like the changes were voted in, and it indicates the confusion. To be honest, Mr. Rogers shouldn't be summarizing what the motions are. That kind of thing should come only from the clerk, Jackie Danielson, and he should not make rulings because many of his rulings are wrong.
Can I ask you to stick to the question at hand, please, sir?
I thought this was public forum.
Yes, sir. I'd ask you to remain civil in your comments, and that includes not saying words. So please.
There's nothing uncivil by putting a name to something that happened.
Well, I would ask you to use the word lie. Please.
Okay, but anyway, I won't pursue anything more on that. But I do think the public has a right to know the language of each motion, and not just the title of the motion of the agenda item, and also again with this motion of germaneness, there is no justification. Yeah, I read Roberts, and Roberts says germane applies only to amendments to a main motion. And the key thing is that it has to relate to that motion. It could even be contrary to what the original amendment wanted, but as long as it relates to the main motion, it's germane. But that's the only place. There is no place in Roberts about germane being able to interfere with the right of the First Amendment. And of course, in Roberts, there are restrictions. If a person is either verbally or behaviorally disturbing the meeting. And that's not the way that this council has operated, because each time that I have been removed, I was not interrupting the meeting, and I was not doing anything negative with regard to the meeting. All I was doing was exercising my First Amendment rights.
Yes, sir.
I would hope that at some point, Mr. Mayor, And you and I have talked about the First Amendment on Facebook, and we agree. But when it comes to the council meetings, all of a sudden, every day that I look at a council meeting agenda, it has that word germane. It should be removed. But thank you for listening. Thank you for listening.
Yes, sir. I'll just note on here for the decorum and debate where it came up for the question of using the word lie. It's in 4321 of Robert's Rules, and it says the moment, or it says a member, or, and I would take the public to be this as well. If a member disagrees with a statement by another in regard to an event he's witnessed, he cannot state in the debate that the other statement is false. He might state, I believe there's strong evidence the member is mistaken. The moment the chair hears the word fraud, liar, or lie used about a member, and I'll use that with staff as well, in a debate, he must immediately act decisively to correct the matter and prevent its repetition. So that's what I did in tonight's meeting. And then also in public session, as I've said before, for 928, it says public members are not, or public attendees are not members of the meeting body and ordinarily have no right to participate. We do with open meetings law. Often by rule or practice, time limits are placed on speakers and relevance is closely monitored. So again, just doing that again tonight.
Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Miller, go ahead.
Can we jump back to Mr. Sharp's question regarding payroll?
Certainly.
He had posed a question as to why we don't list everybody's salary every week during a council meeting. Is there some specific reason, or just the monotony of another 300 pages of a document, or what's the story there?
Can address that. So one of the things that just keep in mind is that, you know, every year, once a year, we do have our payroll resolution, which includes everybody's rate. So anybody at any time can see that in the council packet. It's usually the second meeting in June that's in there. And then what also we have to do once a year by Iowa law is also publish everybody's actual salaries for the year. And so that gets, so if anybody really wants to know what anyone has made for a year, those actual salaries do get published. So I think that's why the thought of why would we need to, you know, include them every time. Now, I will tell you what used to happen is when we were in person, those listings were in the stack that council members signed with the bills. I think the complication has just been, you know, whether to include them in the packet or not, payroll. And again, knowing that payroll rates are approved once a year, the actual salaries are approved once a year, I think it was determined whether, you know, why would we need to include them in every packet?
Okay, thank you, Director Rodenbeck. Any other questions on that?
Nope, thank you.
Seeing none. And all right, so that ends, I see no other hands for public comment. So that ends the public forum session and moves us over to executive session. So I'll now, does it remove us? I wouldn't adjourn us, but remove us to executive session. And so with that would mean everybody who is not part of the council or part of this executive session would need to leave the meeting at this point. But I thank you very much for attending tonight.